Session 12. Before we begin, there are many things that I spoke about in the previous session is in Living Without Regret. The Dutch title is Oneindig Afscheid, and it's in a few languages, so you should be able to find it. And it is more coherent, more thought out, thought through there. What has not been discussed, and there is what somebody brought up, I think it was you maybe, that is there advice coming from the other side? And yes, there is, as long as we have prepared for that. So we'll come to that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. That's when I mentioned Avalokiteshvara. So you want to go there, and then we have a question here. You want to go first?
Yeah. Before they died.
Oh. So if I hear correctly, the person was taking ibuprofen, painkillers, and then was clear and said goodbye, right?
Yes.
And then suddenly she said that her friend had stood her up.
Right.
Stood her up was not showing up on an appointment. So you have a date, and the date doesn't show up, then you say she stood or he stood me up. He didn't show up. She didn't show up. So laten zitten. So I don't think the question is if that happens a lot. No, I don't know that. But when the people in that state talk, they can talk about something that happened and that is still with them. It could also be entirely made up, and it could also be that it actually the person hears advice of what to do next. So yes, you can hear very clear sentences that may represent the past. It may represent something that is hallucinatory. Or it might be something from actually that they is also hallucinatory, but that they think it's somebody who's talking from the beyond. Like they say, well, I heard that I should come now. It's all in the mind. So I also, and then I answer the next question, ask the person if she's satisfied with this answer.
She says that was her friend who had died before her.
Oh, that's how it goes. So, do not doubt if this is real or not. You treat it as real, but it's not. But you treat it as real. You know, there's not a friend, well, this is an important experience for this person. That's the only thing we can say about it. It's not whether it's real or not or possible. That's not relevant. It's important for this person. I also would like to say that whatever you have heard now about dying, there might not be anybody in your environment that dies like what I was describing. So every situation is different. There are people who die and we are not part of any process. My father went out to dinner, he went to the bathroom and he died. So what phases did he go through? Well, we talked about that he would die one day, but there was nothing what we talked about now, or you have to go through the top of your head. None of that. But I also had experiences where a person was slowly dying, and he definitely asked, whatever advice I have when he's close to dying, to please give it, and I just copied the book. So everybody is different. And don't think that it is nicer for you if it goes slow. It doesn't matter. The person who had a dinner last night and died, You say, well, that's wonderful. Oh yeah, we also think it's wonderful to die in your sleep. Wouldn't we want to do that? It seems wonderful because it's painless. We don't know if it's painless. We don't know what's going to happen after. So we cannot really assume that, oh, now he's in peace. He may. We don't know. So, yes, we have a question here about that it was a very different way of dying. So she had Alzheimer, and she had a moment of very clear, of clarity, and she decided she wanted to die.
And she kept it on for 12 days, and she slowly...
Yeah. Yeah, there are such stories too, people who don't... Sorry? Well, maybe I have to say it much more clear. There is no specific way of dying. There's no recipe for dying. Nobody dies the same as anybody else. There are fantastic deaths that is totally healing to people. That's wonderful. Everybody is a beautiful experience because they're dying. And there are dying and death that are awful, that are terrible, that is struggling and fighting. So there's not one way of dying. But if there is a process, and if there is a moment that the person is confused, doesn't know what we should do, like meet everybody together and let's play music, but confused, in the middle of a struggle, and many dying people are very confused when they die. They're very afraid when they die. If your mother or father is not afraid, bless them, wonderful. So, it's always the dying person that takes the lead. If they cannot take the lead, now you can do something. And that is to silently say you're dying, there's no way back, silently saying you have to leave the body, go into the light. That is if there is guidance obviously needed. But to think that it is a wonderful experience is exceptional. So yes, it does happen. All right, so the experience that you had, you value. But just like there were two people in this room that described a wonderful experience, I'm sure there are at least two people that didn't have a nice experience. You know, the mother or the father just disappeared without giving any sign or any hint or any healing or anything good or bringing people together. So anything can happen. The point is that we want to prepare for the most favorable conditions for this moment. That is why we are learning all of this. Yeah? So 1 second. So we have an example here of a father that seemed to have been reanimated and coming back to life in the hospital and then in a coma. And it seemed that he gave some sign that he was still there and nobody else in the family saw that. Those are all very critical things, like nobody else saw it, and you don't need to convince other people that it happened. You saw it, and that's enough, and that is a sign that he was still there. And then you also felt that he was confused, didn't know what was happening. So I think if you had a good experience, it's really helpful for the rest of your life, and also learn from how they did it. Is there something that you can remember how they did it that can be guiding for you? I don't want to take away any wonderful feelings, but you don't know what happened afterwards. So that comes tomorrow, Thursday. So it's not necessarily that it stops and everything is fine. It's wonderful that you have that experience, but the process is not finished. So keep communicating, even if it was all wonderful. This is an important detail too that you gave, that she decided to die, and it is possible to make that decision apparently. I've not been in that situation, so I don't know. But people who want to die, all they need to do is to stop eating and drinking. So first you stop eating, and as long as you drink, you will live. You can live for 3, 4, 5, 6 months on just water. So if a person is still drinking, even a few drops on the tongue, that can be enough for If they stop that, then it's very soon it's finished. So if you're ever in that position consciously and you want to, sounds very harsh and mechanical, but stop eating first and then stop drinking and you will die. The question of euthanasia is a question that all Tibetan Lamas try to avoid because they come from a very different culture than we come from. So we have this interesting sentence. I have no idea where that comes from. We put an animal to sleep. It's a very nice sentence. You know, it's for us. It's very good to say it that way. And then in Holland, people who are foreigners, you don't know that in Holland it's much, much, much easier. It's supposedly getting more difficult now, but it's much more easy than probably in many countries of the world. So in Holland, there are certain conditions that if you meet them, they can end your life, like irreparable pain, irreparable suffering, without any end in sight, and 2 doctors, and then yes, they can give you a shot. And of course, the problem is that many people are not in the position to decide that anymore. So you need to do that beforehand. But then the doctor comes and asks you if you're ready for it, but then you're not capable anymore. So you have to have a power of attorney. It's a complicated process. And I'm hesitant to say anything else because, you know, if I'm in that situation, I probably want a shot too. If there's irreparable pain, if Alzheimer is so close by, it's such a horrible disease, plus many other diseases that are horrible. So is that the time to really end it? I think...
He has been for 3 weeks or something, but it was not 100% he was back. It was about 60%.
So the father who had the blinking of the eye actually did come back. I would like to give an observation, which I don't know if that's so thought out too, but it's important to know that the Tibetans didn't have all the medical care that we have. You know, they didn't have chemotherapy and radiation and pills and all of that. They didn't have all that. So all they had was some natural herbs and mantras and visualization and energetic work by the lamas who were capable of doing that. So the situation is a little bit different. If we are kept alive already through all kinds of operations, it's different. You cannot really compare that person who went through that whole process and it's really endless and without any relief in sight. That's very different than somebody who is in the highlands of Tibet who, you know, doesn't respond to mantras. Then they say, well, don't do anything else. You know, there's nothing else than to shoot him to death. There's no, or kick him off a cliff. They don't have a little, maybe they did, but that's not, so it's not really comparable. So in our situation, it does seem to make sense if it's irreparable. But having said all that, if that's happening, you will not experience this moment of death, supposedly. I don't know. I haven't come back from that. But that's what they say. If you're getting shot like that, you bypass all those stages. It goes. And morphine maybe too. So it's difficult. But if we're ever in the situation, you need to manage your pain unless, I don't know, do you go to the dentist and say, you don't need to give me any, you know, just go ahead and pull that tooth because it's just sensations? There were people who did that. Say, it's only sensations. No, give me that shot. So, with all of these things, you know, you leave them on the table. You don't agree, I'm not talking to you now, but you don't agree or disagree because it's such a different, these teachings are so different than our ordinary language. These teachings come from beyond what we can think about and beyond what we can talk about. Don't forget that. So you cannot counter it. I'm not talking to you now, but you cannot counter anything you hear with a thought because it comes from a different state. So you also don't have to say, oh yeah, that's true. You don't know if it's true. But it's interesting that the Tibetans have developed the language in such incredible detail, and most of us really know nothing. Until it happens, maybe all of the knowledge is suddenly accessible to you. You want to die, you decide to not eat anymore, not drink anymore. But that person isn't a better person than you and me who want a pill to not suffer, you know. That's not like a better person. We're just lucky that it happened. All right? Yeah?
Can we ease the pain of a dying person on an energetic level?
Well, this is one of the many times that I should know. Well, I don't know. Yes, you can. But some pain is, there's just no comparison to pain and energy work. Energy helps to release, energy helps to expand your awareness. But if somebody has excruciating pain in the bones, you can do nothing with energetic work. Really nothing. It's so incredibly intense. You know, if you're at the dentist and he says, no, I don't give you a shot, I just put my hand on your cheek. I decided to change my method and I do energy work. I don't want to, give me that thing. And there's no, you know, there's nobody who has that kind of energy transmission anyway, so. But you know, these questions are so theoretical. Is it really, I mean, maybe not, but I'm always getting a little bit antsy and kind of joking. If it doesn't come from your experience, I cannot even remotely give an answer that's appropriate. So, is the person considering of going to the dentist without shot?
Not yet.
All right, we're going to do some serious work. Are you ready?
Standing up or lying down or
Now that will be wonderful. Your turn will come too. That you want to get up, but you can't anymore. We can still get up. Huh? We have a speedy kumne. That's good for the exercise. Oh, I should say which ones we're going to do. Now you all have to go down again. 17, 18, and if we're still standing, we do 29. Here we go. Who doesn't want to loosen blockages? Exercise 17. So, we're starting. So we're taking a standing position. The feet are turned outward. And your feet are about 10 centimeters, 5-6 inches apart. So bend the knees and place the hands on the hip. So it says here, sink down as far as you can. So I mean, I don't know about sinking, but go down. And you first go up and down a little bit, because otherwise it's kind of resistance comes to the foreground. Just up and down so it is supple. And if you ask how long, Rinpoche tells you, do it until energy is moving in the lower body. So tell me when it does, then we can go on.
Yep.
Okay, now go a little bit down and hold it. Sinking down. You know about that German who was a Coast Guard?
Tell me.
I'm thinking.
Up and down. Now coming up. And twist the whole upper body. Hold the hips in the same place. Move the upper body to the right and to the left. Slowing it down a little bit. The movement is not a physical movement. You move physically because you want the energy to become flexible. And that's always around the spine is the best place to go to. So move, twist, to lose the energies. Always to make the energy flowing or at least pliable and flexible. Because what we're looking for is that energy is free to make shapes, not like a rigid pattern of frozen shapes moving. Coming back to the center. And then go up and down a little bit. Bend your knees a little bit out, bend, but also a little bit out. So first a few times up and down. Going down, especially if you work for the police, go really down. Coming up, and one more time, move to the left and the right. So you twist. It's the energy becomes pliable. That's what you want. You know, they say that people die the way they have lived, but that's not true. People can change completely just before they die. Okay, come back to the center, gently release the arms. Let them go behind your back. Make a vogelnestje, make a bird. Interlace the fingers. We call that vogelnestje in Dutch. At least in Holland. Okay, now move the hands to the left and the upper body the other direction. So the fingers are interwoven. And then go to one side and then the hands to the other. So it's all to flexion the energy so that it becomes pliable, malleable, and eventually flowing, integrating with space. Okay, now come straight and then go horizontal with the upper body. The arms go up. I'm changing the order a little bit. I turned the page too quickly. Horizontal, yeah. I'm not saying anything. Coming up. Release the hands. The arms go sideways. And then keep them like that, the palms face forward. And now move all the way to the right. Keep the arms in this position. You go one side. Don't go too far, it might tighten up on your rib cage. And the other side. Other side. So experiment a little bit, go a little bit faster. And Kumne you do slow for very good reasons, but you also want to change rhythm and see if you're changing. Do you start to hold? Do you start to contract when you go faster? Or is the energy remains pliable? Because if it remains pliable, you can do much more if you go fast, slow, fast, slow. So your energy is not limited to the shape of the physical body. It's a different situation. So when your arm goes up and down, your energy goes up and down, way beyond where your fingertips reach up or down. And this means you can handle many situations at once. If you're frozen, you can only handle maybe one situation. But now you can handle 10, 20, 30 situations, because your hands, position of your hands indicates a situation. So look at all the situations you can take care of. Avalokiteshvara has 1,000 arms. She doesn't, but it looks like. Very good. Coming to a still. Now just wait a moment and see how your arms would like to come down. There's no specific way. See what happens, how they want to come down. No big deal either. So the most important thing about Kumne exercises is that there's no beginning and end. So when you sit down, there's not like you stop standing and you start sitting. So sit down without any transition. Pull up your knees. So the feet are flat on the floor, and look at Andy's hands. You hold the hands just below the knees on the outside. So the shoulders are a little bit up, and pull in the belly, maximum. And breathe through nose and mouth, and let the breath find its own rhythm in this at first awkward position. Pull the belly in tight, as if it's touching the spine. Now loosen up the neck a little bit. And then begin to move the head from side to side without moving the upper body. So the shoulders are up a little bit, the belly remains in. The head goes to the left and to the right. Only do one time. Being still. Release the belly, release the shoulders and the knees. And for a few moments, be completely still. And here comes a very important detail. So be still. And Rinpoche suggests, feel the flow of breath in time. Now, maybe you have a different interpretation, but let's practice this way. So you're now at a certain age, let's say 50, and you have 50 years plus 9 months, is let's say on the left or behind you. Breathe into that. Feel the flow of breath going into the corridor of time, going back. I'm going to leave you alone a little bit with it. And once you have done that, the future, the time to come, feel the flow of breath into the future. But you don't need to do everything so quickly. You could just take one. Feel the flow of breath going through the years back into the womb. Now, this is a little bit too quick. You may want to practice by yourself. It's a very, very healing the blockages in the corridor of time up till now. So now in your imagination, go back, close your eyes, I propose, as if between now and your time in the womb, as if that is a passage, a corridor. So there's yesterday, 2 years ago. So you jump from memory to memory because that creates a corridor, a passage, and you go awareness, as if awareness can move like a little bumblebee. It can move through time backwards. You're not stopping at a certain phase, and you're not starting to float into space either. Keep your attention in letting awareness move back through the corridor of time, all the way in the womb. Of course, we may not have any memories, but you can imagine, you can go into it. And before conception, going back. If you think you've done it, you do it again. You want to go back through the corridor of time with awareness. First we did the breath. Now we travel the same passage with awareness. So we can do this very slowly, that more and more memories come up and you keep moving back. But you can also do it faster because you want to move through time. So at some point, if suitable for you, go forward. Don't look for a specific experience because we're opening up the corridor of time, which doesn't have specific experiences. So from this time, go forward to tomorrow, to Saturday, the last evening, maybe to your way back, to Christmas or whatever is your next event. So go forward. And of course, you end old age and the process of dying. Keep going. You don't need to know, it's not true necessarily what you see or feel, but keep going through the corridor of time into old age, dying, and beyond death. So we went back before conception, now we go forward beyond the door of death. So we're going to do it for a little while. Go forward and then go backwards, all the way into the womb and before, and then forward all the way to old age, death, the door of death, and further. Go through that door. Your awareness can. So this completes the session 12. This practice is one of the 3 or 4 ongoing practices that one would do in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And the other one would be is to chant a mantra while you're going through that. And the third part is that you have an image at the beginning before conception. We'll do that tomorrow or Thursday. And you have an image at the end, like beyond death, way beyond death, way beyond death, way beyond. There's another image there. So the process of going back and forth in time, it has many, many advantages, but you open the gates of the corridor of time. In the process, you release many kind of little or bigger holdings, because you just go back and forth. You don't solve anything. You go back and then the holding releases. But what it really does, it opens up the beginning and it opens up the end. You want to get rid of this idea that there's a beginning and an end. Shall we end with this gesture?
Om Mani Padme Hum Re. 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 Om Mani